This is a video on ACT Science Reasoning. So on that test you have 35 minutes to do 7 passages, and there are 40 questions total. So this means you will have 5 minutes a passage, is how I like to think of it, or 52 seconds a question. So let's talk some more about this test. So one of the main things about this test is that it's not really about science. It is really about understanding and interpreting charts, graphs, and data. So you don't really need to know much science. And the main strategy in science reasoning is to go straight to the questions. What do I mean by that? It means don't read the passage. When you get your test, you will have a bunch of charts, graphs, that type of things, words and paragraphs and questions. Don't read the words. Go straight to the questions, and you will be able to read question 1, then you will hopefully be able to do the problem with just reading a few words or maybe just looking at a chart. A lot of times the questions say, according to chart 3 or something like that, graph 3, figure 3, how many this, and you can look at chart 3 and figure out the answer. So, if you don't know the answer to a question immediately, skip it and come back to it later after you finish that passage, and you will probably have a better understanding of the passage and be able to do it. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of questions or passages on the science reasoning section. There's data representation and 2 others. Right now we're going to talk about data representation. And this is really just interpreting charts and graphs that represent data. This is the easiest type and much straightforward. And really all you have to know is a little bit about charts, graphs, figures, and that type of thing. Then there's research summaries, which is very similar to data representations. You do not need to try to figure out the difference between whether or not, like on the past test, you don't need to try to figure out which one is which. You can just do it. The research summaries are making decisions based on charts and graphs. This one you need to be able to interpret charts and graphs pretty well and make decisions that interpret research. These ones are a bit harder, but the final type, if you ask me, is the hardest. And that is conflicting viewpoints. The conflicting viewpoint section is very similar to the reading section of the ACT. You will be given a passage. You will be given a passage with two people who have different views on the same subject. Each one will write a short essay or paragraph or 2 on their views, and you will have to answer questions on them. Usually there are 3 types of questions. Questions on the first person's views, questions on the second person's, and comparing and contrasting them. Usually people are students, scientists, or professors, so we will just call them people for now. And here's my strategy. Read the first person's view and answer the question on the person number 1. Then, so you read the first person's view and you answer the questions on his view. And once you're done answering the questions, you cross out each question on person 1 that you've answered, so that you won't have to read through them when you're going back through. If you don't know the answer to one of the person's view to his view, just skip that question and come back to it later. Usually after you read the second person's paragraph or passage, you will have a better understanding of the topic. After you've read the first person's view, go on and read the rest of it, and then answer the rest of the questions. So, I'm actually not going to do that yet. I'm going to talk about not a lot of times, there's only one conflicting viewpoint on the entire ACT. Usually, it's in this format like I just described, but sometimes, like happened to me, there will be more than 2 people who have the different viewpoints. What I did was I just read all of the people's viewpoints and then answered the questions. If I needed a little to remember, I just looked back at that person's the person who the question was about's viewpoint, so I could remember it. This way I didn't have to read through all the viewpoints, all the questions and viewpoints again, more than once. So conflicting viewpoints usually takes the most time, so here's a strategy to save some time. Save conflicting viewpoints for last, or do it first. If you're only having a little bit of trouble on time, do the conflicting viewpoints first, as the other ones are easier to rush at the end. If you're having a lot of trouble on times, save it for last so you can just guess on all the questions, or maybe if you have time, answer the questions on person 1. So what about studying for the science reasoning? The best way to study is to practice. Take practice tests. There are lots and lots of practice tests online and in books. Usually, especially when you're first beginning, do one passage at a time. Time yourself and try to stay near the time limit, but it's okay if you go over a little bit. You will get faster. Once you are done, check your answers and see which ones you missed. The ones you missed, carefully review and see why you missed them and why the correct answer is right. Once you start getting better, you can take a full science reasoning test. Try to keep it near the time limit. Once you're done with your tests, you can look at all the answers and analyze them and see ones you missed, and analyze them and see which types of questions or passages you got wrong. Usually, I would have trouble on one passage or one type of question. This is what you need to study. In the next video, I will do some questions so you can see how these strategies work.